Hi, I'm Jennifer Bowker in Seattle. This is Brandon Huffman, National Recruiting Analyst for Scout.com. You know, we haven't seen a lot of activity on the commitment front, but certainly there have been a few verbals to watch and talk about. One of the biggest surprises, Jalen Johnson for Boise State. Talk about what they're getting there.
Well, they're getting a guy who comes from one of the best programs on the West Coast, a defensive lineman. In a year where there's just not a lot of good defensive linemen, he's one of the better ones. What made his commitment so surprising is that he had just taken an official visit to Oregon, was there when the Ducks hosted Tennessee, went home on Sunday, and then on that Monday committed to Boise State without even having visited them. He did visit them last week when they played Southern Miss, so he did get a chance to see Boise State. But it was interesting that he committed coming off the heels of Oregon's visit. You know, most times a kid commits to a school that quickly, it's to the school he just visited. But obviously Johnson had a long-time affinity for Boise State. He was one of their primary recruits from the get-go, and he's a guy that he's going to bring a lot of tenacity to the defensive line at Boise State, and more importantly, continues to show Boise State's recruiting acumen when they're able to beat Oregon, Notre Dame, USC, who had all offered him. And their quarterback commitments from Sarah, and now they get a defensive line commitment from Centennial. Boise's doing a good job of going after players from prime programs in Southern California.
And UCLA, they got two guys they were really looking at both in the same day, both cornerbacks, Adarius Pickett and Denzel Fisher. Talk about what they're getting in these guys.
Well, they're getting two of the better cornerbacks on the West Coast. With Denzel Fisher, he had been waiting for a UCLA offer for quite some time. Washington State and Utah were his top two schools. He'd wanted an offer from either UCLA or USC. Being a Southern Californian, UCLA had offered him right the day of his first game, and then he committed 3 or 4 days later. Earlier that day, Adarius Pickett, who has been one of UCLA's top targets for the entire recruiting cycle, they had offered him way back when, and they made him definitely a prime target for them. He took his official visit to UCLA that same weekend that Denzel Fisher had gotten his offer. So it was kind of a case where UCLA had one of their top targets on campus, and then they also offered another top target. Pickett committed, I think, on that Tuesday afternoon. By that night, Denzel Fisher committed. So they get one of the top players in Northern California who's actually having a great season on the offensive side of the ball, but will play defense. And then in Fisher, they get one of the top cover corners in Southern California, a guy whose ceiling is endless right now.
Down at ASU, they also received a couple of verbals recently, and Manny Wilkins seems to be kind of working it there.
Yeah, you know, Manny Wilkins is definitely doing work for the Sun Devils, and you know, you always like that when your recruits and your commits are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because coaches are so limited in how much access and how much time and contact they can have with the recruit. Well, Manny Wilkins isn't limited to that, and he's been making it a point to kind of rally this class and to get some guys together, and I think he's got the makings of a potential coach down the line just with his ability to recruit and to convince some other guys, and he's not done. I know there's a couple other guys in Northern California that he's targeting, a couple other guys that were at the opening that even weren't from Northern California, but guys from the West that he got to know at the opening that he's putting the press on too. So I think Wilkins is showing that he's got an eye for talent, but more importantly, Arizona State's showing that they've got an eye for some good ball players that are outside of the Arizona area.
All right, great. Thanks, Brandon, and keep watching for all the latest news at Scout.com.